Carl and Brendan here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for sure. And it's track by track time as we return to the Machine Head camp to look at what is Machine Head's biggest, most successful album ever. And I'm going to say ever because ultimately this will never be topped. It's Capture Lightning in a Bottle. It is, of course, The Blackening. The sixth album by the band, released March 27, 2007. It sold 16,000 units in the first week and became their second highest charting release at number 54. I thought that was really interesting that it was their second highest charting. But that makes sense when you kind of remember that The Blackening was like a snowball going down a hill.
Yeah.
Not an instant drop hit. But yeah, up to date, certified silver for sales in the UK in the excess of 60,000. That was the UK alone. I took that stat because I was like, hey, 60,000 in the UK? That's really fucking good. But this is The Blackening. You know, we're not going to get into whether or not it's the best album Machine Head have done because if you've seen us talk about Machine Head before, which we have done tons before, you know there's lots of varying feelings on the stages of Machine Head and what was it culturally important, mainly towards Brendan growing up in his youth and aspects like that. I think we just focus on The Blackening, keep it simple and try not to do that comparative, although there are one or two admittedly throughout because of the evolution. You know, obviously this was not the next stage. You described it in another video as the second part of the new Machine Head. Yeah. So obviously Ashes.
Yeah, that's how I felt like it was, you know, like we went, you know, they kind of went through phases, didn't they? Like they moved with the scenes.
Yeah.
You kind of started off Burn My Eyes, The More Things Change, which were both very, very different then to the two albums that followed in the Burning Red and Supercharger. All albums I have a lot of time for, with a lot of great songs across each. But I can obviously, and we can all clearly see stylistically, they were immensely different. When Through the Ashes came out, who knew what was coming? No. Who genuinely knew? I mean, even Burn My Eyes to The More Things Change stylistically is immensely different.
Yep.
And Burning Red to Supercharger is. So with Machine Head, you genuinely, and that's why I always wonder why people are surprised when Machine Head release an album that's very different to one they've heard before. Because at what point have they not?
Yeah, they kind of do it in very, like 2 album cycles almost.
Yeah. And when Through the Ashes came out, it's a strange thing because firstly it was like, wow, what the fuck? This is like the shit.
Yeah.
But then also you don't know what's coming after that, you know. And that's the thing, like we said with that cycle, like moving after cycle, and it was The Blackening, and I guess the rest is history.
It really is. It is going to go down as one of the best albums ever created. And it's been a while since I've given it a full playthrough after on release, spamming the shit out of this album a lot, man.
Yeah.
Right, we kick off with a biggie. It is Clenching the Fists of Dissent. I adore this opening track, and I think it's an incredible marker for Machine Head to lay down a 10+ minute start that, for me, bridges the gap between Ashes and Blackening. Hell, the intro alone, the melody intro, almost works as a transition from the end of Ashes to this. And then we start to build up and the hair stand up my body. I love that when the metal fully kicks in, it's no nonsense, it's wild, as if Machine Head were determined to make sure you knew that they had so much rage to expel. Everything about this song, every instrument, every moment is simply beastly. I love this song.
And I like it too.
Oh, I forgot to add that fight bit is one of my favorite moments in the album. You know that bit, love it. Yeah. I mean, 10 and a half, 11, something like that minutes long. Not really something I've seen Machine Head dabble in long songs before, but mostly back into The More Things Change with Violate and you know, a couple of songs like that, which kind of got to the 7-8 minute mark. Yep.
10 minutes is long for a band that were being labeled as groove metal or you know, whatever they were. No one knew what they were. New metal at that point, probably as well. And I guess in a way it worked because the last song I would have heard of Machine Head would have been Through the Ashes of Embers, like you said, and then the next song was Clenching the Fists of Dissent, if you're doing it chronologically.
Yeah.
You know, and then it's okay. Makes perfect sense. It's a proper anthem, man. Like it is an anthem, like a 10-minute long anthem, and it moves through so many different phases, all of the phases that you've mentioned already. I love every second of it. The fight bit is brilliant, but even better because it switches at the end and then goes into the clean. But how do they, it's probably weirdly on this album because there are a couple of other songs on it. I don't think it gets the love it deserves in a way. Even the album does, but I don't think people pinpoint this track. But I think this song is one of the strongest songs on this album, and also one of the strongest songs that Machine Head have ever written.
So yeah, we are in agreement now. I'm trying not to say too much because obviously we've got a thing to do at the very, very end. But I actually agree with what you're saying, and I think you're right in regards to other tracks getting the love and the attention. One in particular we'll get to, and I think it gets the attention for a different reason, and maybe it overlooks a lot, particularly when you lay down the first half of this album. There's one track in particular that gets more attention than any other for a specific reason, whereas the latter half obviously features a certain song. And that's why that thing gets that attention.
Yeah.
So you're not wrong. Right, let's move on to Beautiful Morning. Okay, so basically it's Machine Head going, right, we've hit you with that. There's the epic. Now here's something that's sharper, bit shorter and more pointed. A bit thrashy, heavy blaster heaviness. That's a bit carnage in the pit. But also, because it was Machine Head at this point, showing the first proper stages of melody and clean singing. I love the riffs. And the really high clean singing that comes in the second half. This ends up being, after a great start, a really powerful track.
Yeah, this actually, weirdly, with all the other songs that are on it, was a favorite of mine on this album for a very fucking long time. And mostly to do with the fact that it is extremely, extremely heavy, but then has that clean singing at the end. But when it goes higher and it has all the backing coming in, going, the angels down, and what I love about that clean singing bit is it's done with a bit of melody, but stays at the pace. Like he sings clean, but the drums and everything, the bass and that behind it are still going fucking crazy. And it is, it's a wonderful, wonderful track.
It is.
Love for this song.
Okay, Aesthetics of Hate. So this is the track I was kind of referencing as the one that kind of grabbed everyone's attention. I'll explain why actually as I go from my notes. So this is, for me, a blistering and scathing takedown that pulls no punches. It's as simple as that. It is a straightforward aggression and intense. But if you don't know, and I'm going to explain why it is this. It is a track that's written in retaliation to an article written by a person called William Grimm for the website Iconoclast. I have no idea if that website still exists. So the article was titled Aesthetics of Hate, R.I.P. Dimebag Abbott and Good Riddance. I mean, there alone is, wait, what? And the article praised the murder of guitarist Dimebag Darrell. Machine Head frontman Rob Flynn said the song was written, Aesthetics of Hate, was written as a fuck you to Grimm and a tribute to Dimebag. Now, I never read this article, so I don't know the context. But that headline alone, what the fuck, dudes? What the hell was that?
Yeah.
And the end result is a track that is pure fucking fire. You feel it, you hear it, you experience it. It's one of the angriest sounding Machine Head tracks I've ever heard. And the guitars in particular, forget Rob, those guitars are ready to go out and fight you. They're going to grow some legs and fists and they're coming to punch you in. It's pure pit gold.
Yeah, I like it too. It's difficult to follow when like we're on the same page with all this sort of stuff. I obviously everything that you said, is exactly what I think about it. I do very much enjoy the fact that I love the story behind it. Like, obviously, I don't love the fact that it had to happen, but in a way, it provided the inspiration for Rob to write down exactly how he was feeling about the situation at the time.
Oh, lyrically, it's very, very straightforward.
Yeah. It's not like it's not something that I feel like he probably spent a couple of weeks on. I think this was penned almost immediately in response. And I love that because I think you feel that in the song. You feel this isn't a song of a man feigning anger. This is a very, very, very angry man. But also Aesthetics of Hate has one of the best solos on this whole album on it. as well, just to throw that into the mix as well. So
it's a banger. It's a
yeah.
banger. It is. Speaking of bangers, though, fucking hell, this album. Now I Lay Thee Down. Epic. That's what comes to mind when I hear this track again. But epic without the epic length. This is Rob Flynn at his vocal best. They are stunning here. The chorus is fire, especially because of the gruff and angry closing shout of the title. That's a particularly welcome touch for me.
Yeah, it's also like it's a bit of a switch up again, like in style across the 4 tracks that we've had so far, because this is probably the closest to a straight up kind of groove metal sound.
Yeah.
It's got a really memorable fucking, and I mean, instantly when you say Now I Lay Thee Down to me, instantly I hear that, you know, instantly. But, you know, it kind of has that, it's very, very bassy. It's very deep. It's actually quite smooth at times as well, with the clean singing that builds up to an epic chorus. It's got a bit of wah-wah again, bit of a kind of a grander sound to the solo.
Yep.
And then, like you said, just ends in an explosion of rage. So, you know, again, one of the tracks similar to Clenching the Fists of Dissent, I think it gets a bit of love, but don't get me wrong, but it's not held in the same high regard as some of the songs on it, but it's actually easily on par with pretty much every song on this album.
No, I agree. And I always wonder as well if it's positioning, but following Aesthetics of Hate, which I think is a great place for it. I really do, because you kind of need that change up of that. Means that people were still sort of sitting there shell shocked by Aesthetics of Hate. So now I Lay Thee Down sort of passes you by. Slanderous, my least favorite track on the album, which just so happens to be a banger too, which is the joke of this album. Yeah. One of the album's wildest and strongest dueling solo performances. So, you know, Machine Head thing they were loving to do in this album was, hey, let's do some long ass soloing. Yeah. You do this bit, I'll do this bit. Let's go back and forth. Let's go back and forth. And it's here. Overall, though, it's just a track that isn't quite as memorable for me, even though I was like, and the joy is, right, when you know an album so well and you hit a track you don't have listened to that often, you're like, oh yeah, cool, I haven't heard this song in ages compared to the others. So it's a lot of fun for me listening to Slanderous.
Yeah, I mean, we're almost spot on this one, actually, because I know the album almost off by heart, but I haven't listened to Slanderous for a long time. So I really listened to it today. Not today, about 3 or 4 days ago. But the reason I did, interestingly, is I saw an interview recently. I don't know if you saw this, with Rob Flynn talking about their new album that they're working on at the moment.
No.
And he didn't call it this. That's quite important. The person who looks after the band or whatever, who's looked after them for most of their career, released to the press that, like, you know, like he's never been more excited. This is Machine Head's The Blackening too. He said he can feel it. It's got the tone, it's got the heaviness, it's got the dual guitars, it's got everything.
Right.
And then somebody interviewed Rob, and he laughed and he was like, look, you know, we never go in to an album trying to write number 2 of something like that. Never works out very well. He said he can see what they're talking. He said it's definitely more in line with the sound that they had here. Big epic sort of songs, 8 to 10 to 12 minute long. I think he laughed and said there's a 14-minute long track on it. He said Vogue in particular like added like almost a 4 or 5 minute solo into the song. You know, and he said like, yeah, it kind of feels like that, but he didn't want to call it The Blackening too. He said, and also he said like, you know, he said he loves The Blackening. He looks back at that. He said, but you know, as a band, you always move on. Anyway, the point of the story is that he said, like, you know, sometimes people forget that The Blackening isn't a perfect album. He said, like, it's great that it's heralded as such. He said, but Slanderous is shit.
Oh,
you know, and I was like,
it's not shit. Come on.
But at the time, I was like, well, I don't think anything on this album was shit. I'm gonna have to re-listen to Slanderous, and I was like, what are you talking about? It's not shit. It's not shit. But I guess like maybe he's doing the same, looking back and thinking like, in comparison to, you know, some of the songs around it, it's not up to the same standard. It's really difficult because like it's minuscule fucking differences. Like Slanderous is not the most memorable track on this album, but I listened to it like you did a couple of days ago, and I fucking loved it. Again, thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was like, I remembered it as I started playing. I was getting more into it, and then I was just thinking like, what are you talking about, Rob? Fucking shit.
Oh, great. I love that though. Story. Part of what doesn't help it is what follows. It is, of course, Halo. The biggest, the grandest, and most spectacular Machine Head song ever created. They may never top this, And it still stands out on an album of bangers. The fact that it still stands out today is all the more impressive. To me, everything is perfect in the song. The riffs, the soloing, the drums and bass, the vocals, the lyrical content, the shifts, the tempo changes, the slight subtle changes that are made to the sound as it moves from pre-chorus into chorus and beyond. Particularly, obviously, the second verse and chorus changes things just slightly. That makes you go, oh, that's impressively different. It is unbelievably good. I've heard this song way more times than I should, and I still love it. I still love it.
Yeah, I'm the same. You know, I agree. I think it's not. It's weird because like I totally get this song is Machine Head's perfection without being my favorite Machine Head song. Which is one of those things, and you know, there you go. But you know, everything you said, I think it's got my favorite sort of dual harmonizing solo, which is just immense. It ends then into a clean bit and then comes back for the ending with the extended halo, which is just fucking perfect, and even more perfect live. The build up to the song itself is immense. Like, it takes its time, it's gentle with it, you know, a little bit of a beat, a little drum comes in, builds up, and then it just comes in with that wow sort of screech, and you're like, oh shit, this is going off here. You know, it is, it's next level stuff, man. Like, this is like Master of Puppets level music.
It's that you may never, they may never top it. It's as simple as that. Wolves, for me, well, like, looking back in the album nowadays more as well with a reviewer's head, because back when this first came out, I wasn't doing this sort of shit. So now looking at it, I was like, I mean, I know Wolves well, but I was like, fuck me, I forgot this is a really long track. And I was like, damn, that's really brave of me. Do Halo. And you're like, okay, follow that up with another 9-minute track. But I guess creativity, they were on such a fucking high, because this is another blistering blaster heavy with some meaty riffs and snarling vocals. I like the raw chorus. This is a very good track with just one problem. I think it might be the album's most repetitive. Even with the shift and tonal changes they make, I found this one felt like because I did Master of Puppets at the same time, this was my disposable heroes. Was like, if it's a little bit tighter here and there. Yeah,
I get what you're saying. I mean, it is, you know, I don't disagree with anything you're saying. I think it's sandwiched between, it's still an album of great songs. It's also sandwiched between possibly my two favorite songs on the album.
There we go.
Which doesn't help it. But it is still, like, even with all the, like, you know, sort of slight mini negatives that we're putting in there, it's still a fantastic song. It's memorable. You know, again, literally every time I say the word Wolves to me, I've got the chorus in my head. I know exactly it straight away. It also has one of my favorite guitar moments across the whole album in it, which is one of the choruses when it ends, and he sort of slightly changes the tone of it a bit, and it goes into that it goes into a sort of softer, smoother bit, and then comes back in. You know, so it's still a very, very, very strong song, a very, very good song on an album of great songs.
Yeah,
you know?
That's what it is. It really is that. It is that whole thing. This is an 8 out of 10 on an album that's filled with 9 and 10 out of 10 tracks. And it's, and even 8 feels wrong. I said it, I'm like, that is right. It's better than an 8 out of 10. Come on.
It's a 9.8 out of 10 on an album of 10s.
We've never, to the date of the site's inception, we've never done anything but 0.5 or 0.0. But tracks like this make you start want to go 9.8, 9.9. Yeah. It's interesting. Brendan's already given the game away what he thinks here, but I feel it's my turn to turn around and say this then specifically. A Farewell to Arms, the final track, has been, ever since I heard it, one of my top 3 Machine Head tracks. I think it is the most underloved track on it. It is one last big one, and what a big one it is. I love how it changes style for a lengthy, slow, and melodic build. I love the transition into the heavier sound. This is an epic, but obviously different to Halo and Collection of Fist of Descent, the other big ones. It has so much I love. I think it's one of the more innocent, subtle vocal performances at the start that ends up then blowing you away by going, hey, that's that, let me do this. Now, I have the time. That's how important this part is. I have the time at 3 minutes and 35 seconds in. Rob Flynn stretches his vocals out on the build of a particular set of lyrical content, and it sends chills through my body. I think that might be his best vocal performance moment there. It's unfair that a track this good but is on the same album as all these other, because it gets ignored then. And particularly if you're at the end of the album, you might be feeling a little bit tired, a little bit ready to leave. And so you may not be as invested in this. Listen to it on its own. If it's been a while and you've not listened to Blackening in a while or listened to Machine in a while, don't do the whole album. Pick this one track out for now, put it on and see what you think. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, you know, this song comes at what, the 3 tracks, including this from previous 28 minutes plus of music, the last 3 tracks, which is more than an album in some cases these days.
Yeah.
Which is, yeah. So, you know, I can completely understand how people, and also I think, like, again, you know, if you're in CD territory here, like, you know, maybe people are still doing that. Like, how long does it take you to get to track 8? You know, like, once you hit Halo, how long do you stay there? Or how long do you listen forward once or twice, but you want to get back to Halo, or you want to get back to Aesthetics of Hate or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it gets forgotten about. But it is, yeah, everything you said. I think vocally it's possibly his strongest, or at least up there with one of his strongest performances ever. It is, weirdly, for its tone, probably emotionally the heaviest song on this album. I think it's got real depth to the lyrics. I mean, there's some very good lyrical content across this album anyway, but I think this one is up there, and real depth. The very first, like, even the clean singing, like, it feels heavy, it feels raw, it feels dirty, it feels like it means something important. And then that very first sort of shout of "A Farewell to Arms" and the guitars that come in, it's pretty fucking brutal, to be honest. But, you know, as a song, like you said, I mean, it is epic, it is huge. It is also the perfect ending to this album if you can stomach the length and go all the way through it, with clenching at one end and this at the other end. Like, you know, it feels like the right ending to the album. Like, do you know what I mean? I wouldn't reposition this. I wouldn't go like, oh no, that would be better in the middle or something. Like, it's not.
No, agreed.
You know, this is where it should end. And I also agree with what you said, because I think you take this song off this album and put it on pretty much any other album, especially anything that followed. Like, say this had hit the cutting room floor, and then they put it on the next album that comes out. It's the best song on the album.
Yeah.
It's the one that everyone talks about, you know.
No, well said. In fact, you remind me of something else I wanted to highlight as well. There's another point, and it comes quite early on this track that I adore as well. And it's actually during the early part of the vocals. And it's the very first time he says "A Farewell to Arms," and he almost says it spoken word style. And it's followed by that boom guitar straight after the dong. Love it. It is. I hope we're preaching to the choir. I hope if you're watching this, we're preaching to you and you're going, man, I'm glad these guys appreciate that track as much as I do. When everybody else is talking about Aesthetics of Hate and Halo, that we're wanting to bang on about clenching the fists of Dissent and A Farewell to Arms, amongst others as well. But you're absolutely right. Like, positioning wise, I don't think it could be. I could not reposition this album any better than it is all the way through.
And that's the thing with this album. Like, it is full of amazing songs, but everything clicked, everything. It opens with the right song, it ends with the right song. Halo comes at the right time. You know, you've just had Now I Lay Thee Down, Slanderous, you're enjoying it still, and then Halo comes and it's like, everything just comes at the right time. It wasn't just that they hit the, you know, the beauty spot with the songs and the songwriting and that. They just, everything just fell into place, like, to create, essentially, in my opinion, a masterpiece. And actually, in the opinion of a lot of people, because this album has been heralded as such by many outlets and individuals.
Yeah, it was comfortably the album of the decade when it was released. And I don't think, as of right now, other than people being contrarian for the sake of it, most people, if you were to turn around and say, "No, this album's shit," you're gonna have to really, really explain yourself. That's not an opinion. That's because that doesn't make not an opinion you can agree with. You have to be able to. It's not an opinion. Oh, what do you mean? Like, why do you think it's shit? And you're gonna have to. Oh, I don't like Rob Flynn. I don't like Machine Head. You don't have to like a band. We don't like many bands, but we know when they do good fucking music and whether it's commonly accepted. You don't have to be following the sheep to turn around and go, yeah, you know what? It's a fucking masterpiece of an album, and it will go down in history as such.
Yeah.
Top 3 tracks.
And this would be the hardest top 3 because I'd love 4. I'd love 4. I am going to go with, obviously, Halo's in there.
Yeah.
A Farewell to Arms is also in there. And I am going to go with Beautiful Morning.
Oh, you did it. You did it. You did it. So
it was between that and the one that you may say.
Yeah, it's exactly that. You already know. It's Halo, Farewell to Arms, and Clenching the Fists of Dissent, which would be your 4th, right?
Absolutely, yeah. That was the 2 I was batting. I was like, oh, what do I do?
Yeah, I think if I had a 4th, it'd probably be Now I Lay Thee Down. That would probably be my 4th. But it is Machine Head's The Blackening. Of course, we always want to know your opinions. You know what to do? Drop them in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and Tumblr. Go to Patreon to help us out over there. That's patreon.com/gbhbl, as well as Big Cartel, where you can find some of our merchandise. We have a podcast running on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. And of course, if you like this video, do us a favour, hit the subscribe button and help the channel grow. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?